Namaskar, viewers and listeners of the Great Game Reloaded. I am Tilak Divesha. Many important developments are taking place across the world. From the US attack on Venezuela to the Saudi UAE fracas over Yemen to the protests in Iran. In this episode, I am going to talk about Iran. Iran is a country that has known revolution. It is a regime that has survived war, sanctions, isolation, and protests. Today, the people are once again on the streets. Markets are shut, universities are erupting, women are defying the law openly, and chants that were once whispers are now being shouted. The crisis was brewing for some time, but within one short week, towards the end of December, Iran has become a country under strain and a regime under pressure, and a population that appears to have lost fear. What began as an economic protest has morphed into something far more dangerous for the rulers in Tehran. The question is not whether Iran is facing unrest. That much is clear. The real question is this: is the Islamic Republic facing the most serious challenge to its authority since it came to power in 1979? And can the regime survive? To answer that, we must look at what is happening now and why Iran keeps returning to moments like this. The immediate trigger was economic and devastating. On December 28, 2025, Iran's currency collapsed to a historic low. One US dollar crossed 1.45 million riyals on the open market. Yes, you heard that right. 1.45 million riyals to one US dollar. That number matters because in Iran, as elsewhere, when the currency collapses, so does trust. Currency collapse is not abstract. It decides whether food is affordable, whether medicines exist, whether savings evaporate overnight. Within hours, Tehran's Grand Bazaar, the historic nerve center of Iranian commerce, shut down. This was not a symbolic protest. It was a declaration of panic. From Tehran, unrest spread rapidly to other cities: Isfahan, Shiraz, Mashhad, Karaj, Kermanshah, etc. And very quickly, the protests stopped being just about prices and current stability. The slogans changed. Quickly, economic anger turned to political. Crowds began chanting, "Deaths to the dictator. Neither Gaza nor Lebanon, my life for Iran. Pahlavi will return. This is the year of blood. Sayyid Ali will be overthrown." These are not reformist demands. These are regime-challenging slogans. They are existential challenges to the system. For the Islamic Republic, this is the red line. Economic anger can be managed. Political defiance cannot. And something else worried Tehran deeply. The protests were no longer confined to one group. This unrest brought together groups that rarely moved in sync. Bazaar merchants, the traditional backbone of Iran's economy, university students openly chanting against the supreme leader, women continuing public defiance of hijab laws, workers disrupting supply chains, ethnic minorities, especially in Kurdistan and Loristan. This convergence is dangerous for the regime because in Iran's own history, it was exactly this alliance, students, merchants, clerics, workers, that brought down the Shah in 1979. Tehran knows this pattern and it reacted the only way it knows how. The response was swift and brutal. Tear gas in Tehran, live ammunition reported in several parts of the country. By early January, at least 10 protesters were believed dead. Hundreds were injured, scores arrested, many of them students. In some cases, authorities pressured families to declare the dead as members of the Basij militia, a militia serving the Islamic regime, and not as civilian casualties, a tactic used in previous crackdowns. But videos told a different story. Unarmed young men shot in the streets. Funerals turned into protests, and that in Iran is a warning sign. Iran's response followed a familiar pattern: concession and coercion. President Massoud acknowledged the protests. He admitted economic pain could push the government to hell. The central bank governor was removed. But simultaneously, heavy IRGC and passage deployment followed. Businesses were shut under cold weather holidays. Protest leaders were detained. Media coverage was restricted. This was not reform, it was containment. And the reason lies in Iran's political DNA. To understand this moment, we must go back to 1979. The 1979 Iranian Revolution was one of the most consequential political upheavals of the 20th century. It dismantled a pro-Western monarchy, replaced it with a theocratic republic, and injected political Islam into the heart of global geopolitics. The Islamic Republic was born as a revolt against monarchy, corruption, inequality, and foreign domination. It promised dignity, justice, and moral governance. But over time, power concentrated. Iran evolved not into a static theocracy, but into an hybrid system, part revolutionary state, part authoritarian republic, part pragmatic regional power. Elections exist, but candidates are filtered. The president governs, but does not rule. The supreme leader sits above the state and rules. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, protects the revolution, not the state. Every major protest since then follows a pattern. In 2009, it was stolen votes. In 2017 and 2019, fuel prices and inequality. In 2022, dignity after Mahsa Amini's death. Now in 2025-26, it is economic collapse combined with political exhaustion. The difference this time is not anger. Iran has lived with anger for years. Three reasons account for the difference. First, economic freefall. Inflation is above 42%. Food prices are up 70% year on year. There is water and energy shortages. This is not cyclical pain. It is structural collapse. Second, loss of fear. Chants now name the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, directly. That was once unthinkable. Third, regional influence has been hit after the Israel-Iran war and the erosion of the power of Hezbollah and Hamas, and when Syrian rebels overthrew the Iran-aligned Assad dynasty last year. The regime looks powerful, but is brittle. Then, women across the country are openly defying hijab laws, not in protest marches, but in daily life. They walk unveiled, they work unveiled, they study unveiled. The state threatens harsher punishment, but enforcement has slowed. Why? Because the regime understands that cracking down hard on women now could ignite a nationwide uprising. As one Iranian woman said, and I quote, "If I put the hijab back on, I erase the sacrifices already made," unquote. That sentiment has spread far beyond Tehran. This unrest comes after a punishing year for Iran. In June 2025, Iran fought a 12-day war with Israel. The United States struck Iranian nuclear facilities. Sanctions snapped back through UN mechanisms. Oil revenues fell. The rial collapsed further. Capital fled. Many protesters now chant, "Why fund wars abroad while Iranians are starving?" That slogan cuts deep because it challenges the regime's core ideology, because Iran's foreign policy, its so-called axis of resistance is not just strategy, it is identity. The world is also reacting. The United States has openly backed protesters. President Donald Trump warned Tehran against violent repression, saying America was quote unquote locked and loaded and ready to go. Iran's former crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, thanked Trump for supporting the Iranian people and added Iranians were demanding an end to this regime's 46-year reign of chaos and terror and want to rebuild ties with the United States to bring peace and stability to the region. The former Iranian queen, Farah Pahlavi, also backed the protests, calling on security forces to join the people in their struggle. European governments urged restraint. Tehran responded sharply. A senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader warned, quote, any aggression towards Iran would be met with an immediate harsh response beyond the imagination of its planners, unquote. Iran now faces pressure on two fronts, internal unrest and external hostility. History shows that combination is dangerous. At the center of Iran's survival strategy is the IRGC. The IRGC is not just a military force. It is an intelligence service, an economic empire, a political power broker. It controls construction, energy, logistics, and smuggling routes. It benefits from sanctions as much as it resists them. And it remains loyal, not to the state, but to the system. That's why the regime has endured. But even the IRGC cannot restore legitimacy. So where does this leave Iran and the regime? The Islamic Republic is not collapsing. Not yet. It has survived for 4 decades, not because it is loved, but because it is resilient, backed by force and a loyal security apparatus, discipline, control over institutions, and fragmentation of opposition with no unified opposition leadership. But history tells us something important. When economic collapse meets loss of fear, when ideology no longer feeds families, and when repression stops restoring obedience, a regime enters its most dangerous phase. Iran is not there yet, but it is closer than it has been in decades. Its legitimacy is eroding. The protests today are not just about bread. They are about humiliation, exclusion, and futility. Regimes can suppress hunger. They struggle to suppress hopelessness. There are 3 possible paths ahead. Scenario 1, the regime crushes dissent decisively. Stability returns. Temporarily, the rot deepens. Scenario 2, managed economic concessions without political reform. This buys time, not loyalty. Scenario 3, escalation. A single spark triggers a nationwide uprising beyond control. Iran today sits between the first 2, but the third is no longer unthinkable. Iran's rulers still hold power, but power is not the same as consent. The protests of 25-26 are not yet a revolution, but they are a warning and they are continuing. History shows this. Regimes do not fall when people protest. They fall when people decide they have nothing left to lose. This is a developing story and things can happen very quickly. I will be back on this issue to keep you posted. I am Tilak Devesha. Thank you for watching. Do like, share and comment. Namaskar and Jai Hind.